World War I wasn't just about the trenches of Europe, it was truly a global mess. So let's shift gears and head to East Africa, where an unexpected showdown was brewing in the town of Tanga. Hidden from the world's gaze, the Battle of Tanga became a twisted tale of delayed orders, mutiny, and one very angry menace with wings. It's November the 4th, 1914, and General Arthur Aitken finally gave the green light for the British troops to advance on Tanga. But here's the kicker. He waited nearly 2 days after the first wave of troops hit the beaches. That delay would turn what should have been a straightforward mission into a chaotic and downright bizarre military debacle. But before we dive into that mess, let's rewind just a bit. Aitken and Colonel Francis Caulfield arrived in East Africa with no idea of what lay ahead. And with time ticking, they hastily picked a landing spot south of a place called Rescasson. Their choice wasn't exactly strategic. It was just the one without mangroves. The plan was to land on November the 2nd at noon, but delays threw the whole thing off. It wasn't until 10 p.m. that the first soldiers finally set foot on shore, under the cover of darkness and the deafening roar of the HMS Fox's 6-inch guns. Those shells turned the night into a thunderstorm of noise and smoke, disturbing much more than just the local wildlife. By the early hours of November the 3rd, soldiers from the 13th Rajputs and King George's own 61st had made it ashore, trying to get their bearings in a land as foreign to them as the moon. They'd spent weeks crammed into overcrowded ships, battling seasickness and eating whatever they could stomach. And some of it wasn't exactly kosher, let's just say. These troops were worn out long before the battle even began. When the order to advance finally came at noon on November the 4th, the Germans had already fortified Tanga and were more than ready. As the Indian troops from the 13th Rajputs and the 61st Pioneers marched towards the town, they ran into a wall of gunfire. Things went south fast. Men scattered, some retreating in panic. And amidst all this chaos, Major Richard Meinerzhagen tried to rally his troops. But when one officer decided to rebel, brandishing his sword, Meinerzhagen had to put him down right then and there. The mutiny was squashed, but the damage was done. And then, as if things weren't bad enough, Mother Nature decided to get in on the conflict. You see, the locals had placed logs in the trees for beehives. The bees were minding their own business when gunfire shattered their peace. And then thousands, tens of thousands of them descended like an airborne cavalry, attacking anything that moved. British, German, it didn't matter. Everybody was getting stung. One poor Royal Engineer signaler took 300 stings to the face alone. Entire units, including the 98th Battalion, were driven back by these buzzing terrors, abandoning their positions in a mad scramble to escape the relentless swarm. As soldiers ducked bullets and swatted bees, one British lad summed up the situation pretty well. "We don't mind the German fire, but with most of our officers and NCOs down and bees stinging up our backsides, things are a bit cocked up and hard. Discipline? Gone. Strategy? Right out the window." It was a full-blown fiasco, with soldiers firing wildly in every direction, at the enemy, at the bees, and at their own misfortune. By the time the smoke and the buzzing had cleared, the toll was grim. The 101st Indian Grenadiers bore the brunt of the losses, accounting for more than a third of the battle's dead. The Commonwealth War Graves Commission now stands as a somber reminder of their sacrifice, with the names of 5 officers and 135 men from this unit carved into history. These landings were a mess from the get-go, so they sent Meinerzhagen into Tanga on the morning of November the 5th to see if he could cut a deal with the enemy. The Germans, feeling generous, said the British could scoop up their wounded and get them out of there. But of course, even that went sideways. Delays piled up again, and when things just couldn't get any worse, the angry bees once again turned the whole operation into a scene straight out of a nightmare. The British, they took a beating, nearly 400 dead with just as many wounded or captured out of nearly 8,000 troops. Meanwhile, the Germans barely broke a sweat, with fewer than 150 dead from their much smaller force. And then there's General Arthur Aitken, the poor guy in charge of this whole debacle. He got called back to London, probably hoping he could explain how his big bad British army got decimated by just 1,000 German-led Askaris. But let's just say his bosses weren't too thrilled with the story about killer bees. In the end, Aitken got bumped down to colonel and packed off into retirement, leaving behind what might be one of the weirdest chapters in British military history. The Battle of Tanga is a tale that has everything. It's a reminder that even in the middle of a war, Mother Nature can and will throw a curveball, turning an already bad day into something truly unforgettable. Thanks for listening to Boots on the Hill. Hit the subscribe button and the thumbs up button and ring that notification bell for future episodes.